Hey folks, this is Steve with a quick disclaimer. This episode is for mature audiences, even more so than usual, and contains brief reference to sexual violence. Listener discretion advised.
This is episode 47 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason.
I'm Sarah.
My name is Steve.
And I'm Rich.
Awesome. Hey, Sarah, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, that's Sarah Richardson from Magpie Games. She is here today in her capacity as a huge fan of Lamentations of the Flame Princess. We're going to talk about Lamentations a little bit later and some of the stuff that she's working on as well. But before we do that, we're going to talk about some of the games we've been playing. Rich, why don't you kick us off on that? What have you been up to?
Oh, man. Well, here it is 2 weeks in a row where I talk about play-by-post. I kicked off a brand new Monsterhearts game. And I've played Monsterhearts a ton, as you know, on Saturday morning cartoons and a bunch of other times. I've never actually run Monsterhearts. This is kind of exciting for me. And I wanted to do something a little different, and I pitched it out as it is a generation starship. So it's similar to, I don't know if you guys have seen the sci-fi series Ascension, or, some other influences are like Knights of Sidonia, which is on Netflix and pretty cool, or maybe even Battlestar Galactica, the 100 from the CW. All of those are a little bit of influences, and I got a group of really good players in. And what's cool is that because it's a sci-fi setting, right, and I know that Rachel Walton has the Long Orbit, which is a Monsterhearts hack, where she's kind of redesigned a lot of things, and I'm pretty excited to see that. But this one, I wanted to stick to the actual skins and see if you could just, squint your eyes and it would still fit. So we have a ghoul, but the idea of a ghoul on a tin can spaceship with a certain limited number of people who's running around eating people, not going to work. So he's addicted to chaos, and that works pretty well. And then there's, from the skins of the skinless, the Fury. And the idea of a government experiment, the Furies like Carrie, they have psychic powers, heavily controlled and government experiment type thing. And then there's a witch, which can be anywhere, right? A witch in sci-fi? Why not? And
why not?
Why not, right?
I mean, really, at this point, why not, right?
Yes.
For your premise for the game.
Listen, if Leprechaun can be in space, then you can have a witch.
That's fair. Yeah, that's totally
That's
fair.
my justification. The last one I was really blown away by. Jen decided to play a Hollow. Now, the Hollow is a custom skin that is similar to like Frankenstein or perhaps Edward Scissorhands, disconnected, manufactured being. And Jen pitched it as it was an adult who was a failed clone experiment. And so the memory implantation was unsuccessful. And so I'm like, whoa, that's pretty awesome. So she occasionally will have memories of, the clone body, and it's been pretty fun. During the pregame, one of the things that I was really excited about is I just said generation ship, and I had some cool pictures and the like. And we decided, well, let's have some real separation. So I can't remember who suggested it in the chat. They said, hey, what if there was a plague? And I'm like, okay. And so almost all the adults have died. And it turns out that the children are carriers of the plague. So that they're all in quarantine as children.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
All of their interaction with adults are through monitors or encounter suits. The tech level's kind of similar to like Aliens or the Colonial Space Marine type things. There's a lot of heavy robotic stuff going on. The Expanse. Oh, I forgot. The Expanse was a huge influence for me for how things look. So that was really cool. That Plague has created some really interesting moments where they have to interface with adults, and there's a lot of separation and a little bit of, lost children thing going on as well, because they have to run everything. They have duties within the ship as well as school. And then the last thing that we've really enjoyed is we wanted to have some kind of sport. And I'm like, okay, let's have a sci-fi sport. And Tom McGrinery, who Jason, creator of Melandros and other stuff, I think Tom is awesome. He says, you guys ever heard of that video game Speedball? And I'm like, oh, Speedball?
I've never, what is that?
No idea.
Exactly. It's like ancient. It's an old, 32-bit game, I think, old PC game. Hey, look it up on YouTube. It looks horrible, but it's this futuristic kind of lacrosse hockey thing with a metal ball and grav plates and all muscly named warrior people. We're like, yeah, speedball sounds awesome. And I said, oh, I remember way long ago that Avery McDonald actually created on the fly rules for lacrosse in Monster Hearts. And so I hunted it down on the Story Games website, and I just scratched out lacrosse and said speedball. There you go. We have rules.
Nice.
So it's been really fun.
Yeah, it's neat, Rich. That's cool. How many sessions have you guys done?
We're still in first session. We're like 3 weeks in from start to where we are now.
Yeah, I forgot play by post. You said that. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
It's really fun.
All right. What play by post game are you going to talk about next week? Just out of curiosity.
I have to come up with a new one.
It's a trend. Just like Steve's going to talk about a Star Wars game, right?
Yes.
But we're going to Sarah first.
I'm not.
Sarah, what game have you been playing? Do you want to talk about?
Well, for the past almost exactly a year now, I've been playing Dungeon World with the fantabulous group of people for Indie Plus, and we call it Chain World. Kind of the conceit of the game is it's regular Dungeon World, except we were having guest players come on, and they would play one episode, and then they'd come on the next one and they'd GM for us. So we really got to have the longevity of our own characters and see how different GMs handle them in different situations they came up with. It was really fun. So we're winding down to the end of the season. This will be the end of Chain World. And what we've done is these last few episodes, myself and the other players are taking a session and GMing. So Jen Martin just GM'd our last session, and I'm going to GM the next one. Cool. And then Brendan Conway will pick it up and kind of wrap it up with a nice little bow. So we only have 3 episodes left, but I get to play a sex-obsessed, obscenity-devoted barbarian who's really there to just conquer everything that she can find.
I love it. It's awesome. Yeah. It's great. Yeah, it's the best kind of barbarian. It's great.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun playing Shishina. She's kind of the group's id, I think it is.
Yeah, she's definitely not the superego.
No. So we kind of use Rat Queens as our inspiration. Watching it is pretty not safe for work. We get very enthused about describing stuff like lizard penises and having sex with priests in church and cutting off people's arms and beating them to death with that. And that's just the stuff I've done.
I think actually everyone else is pretty tame, if I remember. It's mostly...
I disagree.
She is Sarah Doombringer Richardson. I mean, Rich. Come on.
You guys really should. You should totally check out at least a few of these. There are a significant number of these episodes.
I was going to ask.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have a huge number of people who are fans of Dungeon World who listen to this podcast because of our other Golden Geek nominated Dungeon World podcast.
Subtle.
And so I was wondering, where can they watch these? Are these things they can watch? Are they available somewhere?
Yeah. If you go to Indie Plus's YouTube channel, you can find it through indieplus.org. We have a playlist set up that is just Chain World. So that was our 30 some odd episode, I think.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Wow, yeah.
So it makes more sense if you've seen some of the earlier ones, but these last ones I think are still pretty good.
Awesome. Cool.
Oh, there's cosplay. There's cosplay. I just gotta throw it out there. There are a lot of times that they are dressed in character and it's so worth it. It's great.
There is cosplay. I am lucky and have no shame and have some barbarian armor that I wear and I paint up my face and I yell at the screen a lot.
Why are we not playing games together, Sarah Doombringer Richardson? Right. That's awesome. Rich, you cosplayed last time we played Dungeon World, as I recall.
Yes, I was inspired by Sarah Doombringer Richardson. That's why.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it, Sarah?
No. Although, as a last note, I do not take responsibility for all the shenanigans that happen on the show. It is not just me.
Awesome. I can't wait to go check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes. Steve, you want to go next?
Yeah, I played Galaxy Trucker this past week, and I've been lucky enough to get it to the table a few times recently, which is good. So I've had the thing for 2 years, and before a few months ago, played it twice. Galaxy Trucker is another game by Vlada Chvátil, and again, I know I'm mispronouncing that. I have to be. Designer of Codenames, which we talked about recently, and plenty of other really amazing games. You're trying to construct a ship and then get that ship from point A to point B. And it has 2 distinct rounds, or 2 distinct phases, I should say. and you go through them 3 or 4 times depending on how the game goes. And what you do is you have this little mat in front of you, and the mat has squares constructing, the general outline of a ship, a spaceship. And what you do is everybody simultaneously grabs during the shipbuilding phase for these tiles in the center of the table and flips them over and hopefully finds pieces they can connect to the ship as they're constructing it. And you're all doing it simultaneously. So you're trying to, search for the best bits and, ideally construct a ship out of the chaos and the timed chaos. There's a time limit. If you finish your ship early, you can increase the pressure on the other players, which is fun. And you'll always end up with a ship that doesn't quite work, like your connections are slightly illegal or something. So after everybody constructs their ship, you go around and sort of double check, and every once in a while you'll be like, well, okay, this piece is illegal, which means so are the 4 attached to it, and there you go. You just lost a quarter of your ship. It's very much a game where you have to sort of embrace failure and laugh at the fact that everything's all going to come crumbling to dust around you. And after the ships are constructed and legal, you go through a trip phase, and the trip, you construct a deck of cards, and the cards have different hazards or opportunities. So it's like you can land on planets to get trade, which gives you cubes that you can stick on various parts of your ship. Or it'll have pirates or smugglers or something. It'll have hazards that can harm you or your ship or steal your crew or whatever. So you go through a deck of those, and assuming your ship is still flying and still has passengers on it, you reach the end, get a bonus for whichever place you land in at the end and how much cargo you get, and then move on to the next one. This time around, my friend Jay had the most disastrous luck I've ever seen while still managing to finish. Namely, he constructed a ship, and right from the bat, I think there were like 5 tiles that were illegal because he'd screwed it up a little bit. So it was like, okay, before we leave, all of these are illegal and have to come off. Oh. And we're good friends. So of course I'm laughing at him, and no sympathy. This was like the 3rd round. He should know better. And then on the trip itself, there's just nonstop asteroids that he hasn't properly prepared for, or that just by virtue of bad luck happen to hit the perfect spot to gradually disassemble his entire ship around. It finally left this one tile with 1 crew member on it.
Okay. Is that like the minimum?
Yeah. Had he lost either of those, game over. But he managed to make it to the end. No cargo, no bonuses. But he made it. It was pretty impressive. Anyway, Galaxy Trucker is a ton of fun. There is an iOS app for it as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, I haven't tried it myself, but it's on my radar. I might have to give it a go. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm going to try to get it to the table tomorrow too, I think.
Yeah, I play some iOS board games with some of the community members, and I think maybe we should look into that one. I've seen that. I mean, I've been aware of Galaxy Trucker for years, but like I haven't actually played it.
Oh, okay. I thought you had.
Nope, I have not. No, I mean, I know about it. I know how it works, but I've never played it. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No.
All right, cool.
Just a lot of fun.
Galaxy Trucker. Yeah, no, I love having you on, Steve, because you talk about board games, which is awesome. You break up our role-playing game.
Right.
Rich talking about play-by-post for the 19th time.
And Jason talking about the same game that he runs over and over again.
I know.
Yeah, we all have our shticks.
I know. Me talking about Dungeon World 100 times, I know. Last week, I talked about Worldwide Wrestling a little bit because we played the first session of I think we have about 4 or 5 sessions on the calendar for it. And I mentioned that I wanted to play one more session because I don't feel like I got a good handle on the game because the GM was going really fast and it was very hard to keep up with because I don't know much about wrestling, and B, had never played the game before. So it was a bit much to keep up with. But I ran it this time. And so I was able to kind of pace it out to where the players at the table who had never played Worldwide Wrestling would have an easier time with it. But it was good. We had this interesting dynamic whereby half the table knew nothing about wrestling or very little. Like one of the players had literally never watched wrestling. Like they don't know anything about the tropes of wrestling, right? And the other half of the table was deeply knowledgeable about wrestling. Like they know so much terminology and all the history, and they're making references to wrestlers and stuff. And so it was kind of interesting because I don't know, there was clearly whenever one of us grabbed the narration who didn't know anything about wrestling, we're just making up moves. Like, I do a chicken drop or whatever, right? That's not a thing. But it was cool because the knowledgeable guys, they were really, really cool about, they weren't being like super like judgy or whatever about their wrestling knowledge, right? Like they were trying to like help us. Like they were really cool about like, explaining like kind of what some things meant and all that. So that was pretty cool. I still think Worldwide Wrestling is a touch complicated, at least compared to some other PBTA games, but I'm not sure if that's because I am not super familiar with like the tropes of wrestling and the pace of a wrestling show. I suspect that as I get better at that, or at least start to learn more about that or get used to it, it'll get better. So I have a sort of a reserved feeling that the game is a little, like the moves are very specific and they lead to very specific outcomes, right? And a lot of it depends on you knowing a lot about how episodes of wrestling shows go. But the knowledgeable guys, they gave us some awesome YouTube video links to watch so we could go and watch some good solid wrestling matches that like cover like some of the big themes that the game covers. So that was cool. Worldwide Wrestling, stay tuned. I'm still working on it. Are
the outside the ring moves especially specific as well?
Okay, all of the moves have something to do with either like the way you work the crowd or the way you work the audience outside of the ring, but on camera. So like if you cut a promo, like when you stand in front of the camera and like talk smack or whatever, or say how you're going to beat the guy up or whatever, or if you're working up the crowd or that sort of thing. Or there are moves that are in the ring, like in the ring moves. I don't recall I think there's one move called break kayfabe, and kayfabe is the term of art in wrestling that is like the fake part of wrestling, right? The scripted part. That like lets you bring some of that stuff in that like specifically triggers when you're off camera. I could be wrong about that, but like I said, still kind of learning the game. But we had a great time. It was super fun. It was, I think if anybody watching it they probably, like if we had recorded or something, they would have just been like laughing because like those of us who don't know anything about wrestling were clearly having a good time, but like not knowing anything about wrestling and just like, just saying random words, and all of our wrestlers just punched, they just brawled because we didn't know any moves. So, but it was a good time. It's a neat game. There's a lot of stuff out for it. I hadn't really been following the development of it since the Kickstarter, and now there's like a whole ton of gimmicks and, which is the playbook in that game. All kinds of, multiple seasons and all kinds of stuff. And that's all I had to say about it. So let's move on to the next segment. Our next segment is Giving Me Life. Rich, what's been giving you life?
What has been giving me life is that March 4th is this weird little made-up holiday of March 4th for GMs, because we definitely need more strata and dichotomies in our little niche thing, so we have to celebrate game masters because they're so much more important. I don't care about that crap. There's a 30% off sale at DriveThru RPG, and also it happens to be when Gary Gygax was born, and so that made it some kind of official thing. Whatever. 30% off sale at DriveThru RPG. And they bragged that there were 24,000 titles on sale at 30% off from March 4th until this past Friday. I decided, because I'm stupid, that I was going to at least skim through all of them.
Oh, wait, no.
Wow.
Well, you can filter within the DriveThru RPG. You can just click on GM's Day, and there were 50 items per page. There were about 450 pages.
Oh my goodness.
Now, when you get to the S's and you hit stock art, you can just skip through because it's like you see the picture, there were a lot of interesting observations in looking through 24,000 things. There were very few core rule books that were on 30% sale, and not as many as you'd think. There are many people who decided to start a zine, and they ended around issue 8.
Yes. Zine fade. It's an epidemic.
It is. Another thing, GWAR Limited, I believe, who make the game Hot Chicks, the RPG. They are prolific. I was amazed at how many supplements they have. I don't know if they're successful, but they are definitely working hard at putting out their particular style of RPG.
Very diplomatic of you there, Rich.
I hope none of them are listeners of the podcast. I doubt it, but I hope not.
I'm not judging. I'm just saying there's a lot of that. So either someone's very inspired or it is somewhat profitable.
Yeah, well, I don't know. They found their corner. They're doing it.
And there was actually some pretty cool music. It is well worth kind of skimming through to try to find some cool inspirational tracks. And yeah, if you want stock art, boy, 70 cents a pop. I will say, if you are interested in masks and you want to find some inspirations for heroes, this is the place to go. 70 cents a pop. Mutants and Masterminds characters right there for you with some stock art and names and everything.
Okay.
Ooh,
Sounds like you don't approve of this business model. Am I
not
reading
at
that correctly?
all. Like,
No.
I was like, wow, this is really inexpensive. Like, if you just want a character.
Oh, I thought you were saying that was too much. Oh, okay. All right. I misunderstood you.
Oh, gosh.
Wow.
Well, 70 cents for one character is probably a little much, but I thought it was neat. The art's pretty cool. Of course, you can read comic books, or you can go to DriveThru RPG and pay 70 cents, which is a lot cheaper than a comic book. Anyway, 24,000 items. I don't want to do that ever again.
Yeah, it sounds torturous. Yeah. Why would you do that? Like, that sounds insane.
I bought 12 items.
Okay, so
out of 24,000.
I'm led to believe that the point of GM's Day sale is to gift something to your GM, right?
Is it?
I think that's Sarah's nodding her head. I can see her. She's backing me up on this. So,
Jason,
you ran a game for me once. That's true. You ran play by post, but I run way more games for you. And so where's my gift? Where's my PDF, Rich? Where's my
if I send you a copy, it's going to have my name all over it. But you want to send it? No, it's got my name all over it. They like. What is the thing where they put the
watermark
name?
Thing, yeah.
Watermark. I want to say bookmark, but that's not it. Watermarked it with my name. Sorry, I can't.
That's okay. It's okay. I'll live.
Can't do that.
Awesome. Sarah, what's giving you life?
Well, two things that make sense for me, but might seem kind of odd, is I am reading through the series of Gothic novels called the Northanger Horrid novels.
That's a great name. Wow. That's such a good name.
Wow. But there's a Jane Austen novel called Northanger Abbey, and it's a bit of a spoof of the times, I guess would be one way to say it. But the two female protagonists are recommending books to each other, and they're like, which of these is the most gory and lurid and just horrible? Oh, I have to read that one next. So the books that they name are real books that you can read.
Okay.
So right now I'm reading The Tale of the Black Forest, which is this German, a bunch of short stories that were woven together. But it is very much, proper gentlemen with guns who are going through the forest and hoping not to get robbed, and a woman who may have to marry a terrible person, that kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
And the other thing, I've been listening to it for a while, but there's an album by a band called Sister Wolf, and I believe it's their first album. It's called Villains, and it is all heavy metal fairy tale music. It is the best thing.
Love it. Okay, good.
All of the lyrics are fairy tale inspired, and yet the girls are just really giving it to you on the guitars, and they're screaming, and it's beautiful. So I would recommend checking that out.
Awesome. Just say the names again so people can.
The band's name is Sister Wolf.
Right, yeah.
And their album is Villains.
And the novel was Northanger.
The main novel is Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen.
Right.
And then
right, yeah.
and then if you just Google Northanger horrid novels, it'll give you the list.
Cool. Who's next? Steve, what's giving you life?
So this week, what's giving me life is playing games with kids. I've mentioned that I have, played games with my friend's kids and my friend over the last couple of weeks, I think. And I'm not a father, I don't have kids myself, so this is fairly novel for me. And my friend is a doctor, so he's frequently busy. I very rarely get to see them. It's usually about once a month lately if I'm lucky. But lately we've been playing Imperial Assault. Oh, there's my Star Wars mention.
Star Wars. Woo woo.
Been playing Imperial Assault.
I just filled in a bingo square, just so you know.
And this past week
I took a drink.
There we go. Past week we played Flashpoint Fire Rescue, which was a request from one of them. I love it when, they're excited about a game and they want to play it. So the youngest kid, who is probably about 8 or so, 7 or 8, something like that. His idea of randomizing the dice in Flashpoint is he grabs the dice off the table, jumps onto the couch, leaps to the adjacent couch, jumps back to the first couch, and then hops back down on the ground and slams the dice back on the table. On one occasion, in the exact same position as when he picked them up. Perfectly randomized. This will be 3 weekends in a row. I get to, hang out with kids and play board games with them. So it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Awesome. The thing giving me life this week is Super Friends. So we have this thing that we've been doing for the last, month or so, Rich?
Yeah.
Whereby we just get on a hangout and, maybe it's been about between 6 and 10 of us or so each time. And we just hang out and talk about role-playing games. There's no real format. We just kind of chit-chat. And I'm really loving it. there's not much to it except that, you know, now that I'm kind of like exclusively doing all my gaming online, I don't have the same opportunities to just kind of hang around and shoot the shit about games with people, you know? Like, that's not something I get much anymore of, you know, because like before, like when we were doing face-to-face games in Houston, when I was there, you know, before the game and after the game, we would spend a lot of time just like, you know, talking RPG stuff. And so I kind of missed that part of hanging out and playing games. And so we're doing this thing called Super Friends, and the discussions have been super interesting. We often get designers who pop in, or, you know, like we had some people from Evil Hat today who joined in just to, you know, talk about stuff they're doing, and like, it was cool. Yeah, it was really neat.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really cool. And like, and they're not recorded or anything. It's just hanging out and talking. I think we're going to start recording them though. Like, people have been asking that, like, hey, you guys should record these. I will do that. I won't edit them though. So they're just going to be thrown up raw, I think. But, yeah, no, it's been great. I'm really loving it. I like that connection. I just like, you know, it's fun to meet listeners. It's fun to talk to community members, you know, like, you know, in a medium other than just like chat or whatever. So yeah, Super Friends.
Which super friend are you, Jason?
I'm the one that gets to make out with Batman, whichever one that is. So I don't care. You're Robin. It was Robin, right? Yeah, exactly.
Robin. You're Robin.
Who's your Gleek?
I don't know what that means. What is that?
Oh, man. Deep.
I'm confused. All right, cool. No, Super Friends has been really, really cool. I love that the community has really embraced it, and we're just getting like a nice mix of people, and just kind of, and, you know, just some random people just stopping by periodically, like, who just saw it on the meetup, and, you know, we're like, oh, hey, you know, like, that's, you know, to just hang out and talk. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I'm really sad that I work while you guys are doing that, because it sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's neat. Well, let's move on to the very, very exciting next segment. I can't wait.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are going to do a modified version of the Game Advocates. We'll be using some of the general format of Game Advocates, however, tweaking it a little bit to be a little bit more conversational. We want everybody to participate, and we may want to have a few follow-up questions. We've heard that Sarah Doombringer Richardson kind of, I don't know, she says some crazy stuff, and it might be confusing to our pea brains, so we may
Can I just say, I want an OSR podcast on our network that's just called Doombringer. That'd be amazing. That'd be so fucking awesome. Sarah, you can have that job if you want. I'm not even kidding. All right.
Doombringer with Sarah, I think that's all you need, really. Well, Sarah is, would you say that you are a worthy advocate for I'm not going to say it that way. Lamentations of the Flame Princess?
Thank you, Rich.
I can't say
it's
Lamentations.
Definitely not Lamentations, though. That's the wrong way to say it.
I'm being educated. Sarah, you are the advocate. How do you say this game?
I say Lamentations.
Oh, okay, all right, it's fine. I'll take, as an authority, I will yield to her pronunciations.
Actually, while I was being silent over here, I just looked it up, and the first syllable, according to the dictionary, rhymes with the word lamb.
All right.
It has the exact same vowel indication.
I stand corrected.
Lamentations. There you go.
Lamentations sounds very fancy, though. Lamentations is the fancy boy way of saying it. I'm going to say Lamentations. Right.
You know what? It's cute when you say it, JC. You should keep doing that.
Actually, I did want to just say that I'm not an expert. I guess I should mention that I do occasionally do freelance work for Lamentations, but that should not be taken as me being official about anything.
No, for sure. Yeah.
Tell us about Lamentations of the Flame Princess. What is it about? I mean, what's the deal?
Basically, it's a retroclone. So it's based on
Wait, what's a retroclone? Like, that sounds very mechanical.
Yeah. So there was a series. There's been a wave of games that came out that are based on the original D&D. Like back whenever you couldn't be an elven thief, you were just either an elf or a thief. And so the author, Raji, he took those rules and tweaked them and was like, this part doesn't work, but I like this part, so let's take this and mess around a little bit so we still have that feel. Mm-hmm. But then he did stuff like add in, black powder weapons, which is just so much fun because, then you're an elf with a gun. So that's what a retroclone is. It's just a wave of games that have come out modeled off the original D&D version, but updated to have different settings and different mechanics, like Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea, which, if that's not the longest game title, I'm sure it's a contender.
I think the longest one is look at your murder.
Oh, yeah.
Look at your murdered father.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that was part of the GM's Day sale.
Thank you, Rich.
and I do have to say, Astounding Sorcerers and Swordsmen, it's a fantastic game. So all of these are fun games where it's very, kind of more old school dungeon crawly. So the difference with Lamentations, the default setting, even though you can buy setting books that have different options, the default setting is 17th century England.
Okay.
That's why you get the black powder, but there's also magic. And really a lot of, what makes it awesome are the different modules and setting books that you can get. Mm-hmm. 'Cause they're really where the fun of the game lies. Like you can run your own campaign of Lamentations and have a fantastic time. But if you pick up one of the books and you kind of start taking ideas from it, at least, there is some seriously messed up stuff in there. It's great.
Yes, I agree. I love it.
The 17th century England setting thing is very interesting. Like, you mentioned elves. Is that like you can do elves in this game, or are there elves in England in here?
So you kind of play it as, it's a little bit your choice. But you can have elves running around in 17th century England, and then it's kind of the GM's choice on whether or not that's widely accepted, or if people come after you and try and burn you because obviously you're a devil.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. No, it's a nice, I guess, way of making their difference, kind of stick out in the setting, right? Yeah.
Now, I've heard the Lamentations of the Flame Princess, there's a lot of horror elements in the game. Is that right?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I like it so much. So there's really this feeling of cost in terms of magic. It's kind of notorious for the fact that first level magic users get a spell called Summon, which really is you can summon some sort of terrible, terrible demon, and you have to roll to figure out, how many appendages does it have? What is it made out of? How many eyes does it have? What kind of powers does it have? I mean, the spell is 5 pages long. You also have to roll about whether or not you control the monster that you have summoned. So you can
yes.
summon, you can mean to summon a little tiny imp who's going to help you with this fight, and you end up summoning this Cthulhu-esque horror that then rampages through the world and eats you and your friends. There's this risk and feeling of real cost whenever you cast magic. This is serious shit.
Right.
And that is why so often sorcerers and magic users will end up, their friends will lock them in a room when they start casting summon and they'll run away. They're like, I will be back later and see if you're still alive or not.
I'm led to believe, Sarah, that one of the things that James Raji had in mind was that, or at least one of the things that kind of guided him was this idea that these people are going down into a dungeon, going into this place where all these monsters and stuff in the dark, that's a really horrifying thing. It's not something that should be done heroically, right? It's a thing that you should
right.
do trepidatiously, right? And so I think I love the spirit of that personally. I think it's pretty awesome.
No, I definitely agree. 'Cause you also, whenever you're running it, you start to feel the game is going successfully whenever they're like, oh God, we need to get out of here. We're gonna die or something worse if we don't get out of this terrible dungeon very quickly.
Right, yeah.
So that's a lot of the horror that kind of inspires it. And yeah, that's something I really like about it too.
Cool.
So I'm curious though, we've got this whole Lamentations thing. It's pseudo-Gothic, history, horror themes. D&D 5th Ed's got Ravenloft coming out. Why wouldn't I just do that?
I'm sorry, that was so rude.
They've got Strahd.
Fuck Strahd. Oh, sorry. The best way I can give an example is in movie format. D&D Ravenloft 5e is like watching Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, hell yes, I will watch that. Thank you very much, Gary Oldman. This is great. Yeah. Whereas playing Lamentations is more like watching any Cronenberg movie.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Because the horror is a lot more personal, and there's a lot more about your body that could potentially be involved. Which even whenever you're just playing a character, if the GM starts telling you that, your body is starting to change in ways that normal people are going to look at you and be really, really scared of you. You know, that's a little different than walking into the mist and, oh no, there are vampires.
Yeah.
As cool as the vampires can be, there's a more visceral kind of horror going on.
Okay, yeah. So you're willing to walk away from Lord Soth, Night of the Black Rose, is what you're saying. I respect that. That's fine.
Earlier, Sarah said, fuck Strahd. Emma, tell you what, I would fuck that 5e one. He's pretty hot. Not even kidding.
The art is great.
Yeah, he's pretty smoking. I mean, like, someone said that, like, there's like a close-up image of him where he's got like some Edward James Olmos going on in the face, but I will tell you, the picture where he's like sitting in the throne and like drinking a glass of wine, I'm like, yeah, he could get it. Strahd could get it completely. So, throw it out there.
And you're not going to have that with any of the Lamentations things.
You're supposed to convince us to want to play Lamentations, Sarah.
Well, you would definitely play it for different reasons.
Absolutely.
Talk about this Thulian Echoes. What is this thing? It's a module you laid out?
The more important thing than me laying it out is that it is my favorite module to run at conventions for Lamentations. So it's...
Why?
You have to kind of run it in 2 sessions. And I did this at North Texas RPG Con, where the setup is you and your group of adventurers, you are chasing this wizard because he is silver and you want it. And you chase him to an island. And you go through the dungeon and try and find the wizard. The conceit is then you come back and play it again, having found the journal of the previous adventures. So you have all your knowledge up to the point where your first character died. Yeah. But because it's supposed to have been like hundreds of years in between the 2 sessions, the island has changed since you were there. So it's like you have knowledge, but it can be faulty. And there's this wonderful system Zakharov came up with to change the island and keep track of like what's going to happen. And this nice chart that you roll on that's like, hey, so this is one of the major events that happened in between the time. Yeah, even going through it twice is not a guarantee that you're going to survive. It is so much fun as a GM to run that.
That's cool as shit. I love like interesting narrative shifts like that, like little like narrative perspective shifts and stuff like that, like, or non-linear like narratives. I love that. So cool.
Yeah, like it can be hard to pull off and not be a dick about it.
Right.
So you're supposed to tell people, like, be very honest, like, this is what we're doing. And they have so much fun. But that's one that I definitely recommend playing. I just really like running that one. Scenic Dunsmouth is also a lot of fun, especially if you're a fan of Lovecraft.
Cool.
So let's say that we end up in this North Texas thing, and Steve, Jason, and I are going to sit down and play Lamentations, and Jason doesn't know all that he knows. He's ignorant in this scenario. And so we're all new players coming in. What would you warn us about when we're sitting down to play Lamentations for the first time?
Primarily, I would focus on the fact that it is really, especially the way I personally run it, it is really a horror game. There can be a high mortality rate, so you shouldn't be dumb. You know, some really terrible things might happen to you based on the dice. Of course, I will always be honest with you about what's going on, but the dice are not your friends necessarily, and neither are the things that you can do, and sometimes you need to just run away.
Right. Yep. I had somebody run Lamentations for me recently, and we discovered that like after the party was mostly dead. We're like, oh, the solution was to run.
Yes.
But I mean, my character just cowered. My character just cowered in like a closet with my little candle, and that was it. And I lived. I was the only one. So and it was great. I loved it.
Whenever I ran Scenic Dunsmouth for Indie Plus, I ran it for 2 people who don't normally play OSR games. And one of them was Mark Diaz-Truman. And he did not get a scratch on him because every time I'm like, hey, do you want to go in the house? He's like, no. I'm like, you hear a crying baby? He's like, I'm not going in there. And he managed to walk through without a scratch.
That's a Latino in him. Like, you don't answer the door if somebody rings the doorbell. You don't do it, right? Like if someone rings the doorbell, you turn all the lights off and like, you don't, I'm serious. Like, he knows what I'm talking about.
Tell me, Doombringer.
Yes.
What do other players love about the game? I mean, I think I've got a feel for what you dig about it. When they talk about Lamentations, what's the buzz?
Well, I know for like my friends and the people I've played it with, there's that feeling that it kind of gives you that old school flavor with just a shot of pure heavy metal and adrenaline and terrible, terrible things. Other people really like some of the more philosophical things behind it. So, for example, the fact that your alignment, it doesn't really have anything to do with how you act. It's more the general forces in the universe that you attract to you, which can be really bad if you go into the wrong room and you're chaotic and there's a bunch of lawful things in there. They're gonna mess you up. It's a shift away from the original D&D, and it's got some really fun little things in there. Plus, who doesn't like guns?
True. Okay. Now, flip it around. What do people, generally, the internet hates everything. So just glean from the crop. What do people, when they say they hate Lamentations, they never play Lamentations, or this is the worst retroclone OSR game. I hate Lamentations, and this is why. What is it they normally say?
I think most of the time they're going to say the art. There is a perception that there is more violence against women in the art, which there is a lot of violence against women in the art, but that's because there's a lot of women in the art. And actually, most of the time, the violence is being done to male characters, a lot of them. And I say that as someone who's done art for Lamentations. It's something that Raji is very conscious of. There is also some mechanical sexual violence in the game. For example, the summon spell. One of the bad conditions if you roll badly is you can actually end up with the entire party raping and impregnating each other no matter the gender. And that doesn't sound like something fun for me in a con game.
Yeah,
I have to say. For me personally, and I know this makes me the weakest of the weak, I take stuff like that out of con games. So if you cast summon...
That in no way makes you weak. No.
Well...
I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that would make me puke that you leave in gleefully, and I'll be like...
Now I want to run it for you. But so I can take the sexual violence, the mechanical sexual violence out of the game and still enjoy it and still have a full experience of the game without having to make players describe how they're raping other characters.
Probably a good move. Yeah, I think it's probably a good move.
But those are the two things that come up as the big negatives. Plus, of course, some people don't like Raji.
Yeah. My familiarity with Lamentations is, it's almost entirely aesthetic. Like, I use the scenarios to basically play Dungeon World. Like, I like just some of the setting elements, you know, and I prefer to play Dungeon World, right? But I use a lot of the Lamentations material just to kind of inspire stuff. I wasn't personally aware of that particularly nasty spell you just described. I'm not aware of that.
It's only one option, and like I said, like 5 pages. So yeah.
What do you think about this? Like, you know, when I go through one of those modules and I see like all of these very, very graphic and like gross, like violent things going on in the imagery, to me it reads as so excessive that it almost has like a Kill Bill like gratuitousness to it, you know, like it's hard to take it seriously because it's so over the top and it's so like, you know, much. Like, am I reading that wrong or what?
No, I think you are reading it correctly, because a lot of it is born from the same aesthetic that you see on heavy metal album covers.
Right.
And like I said, as someone who has done art for this series, Raji, for example, was like, hey, I need you to draw me a bunch of naked dudes wrestling. And I need them to be big, and they're very naked, and there is just a hedonistic quality to this.
That sounds like a party, so that's great.
I was pretty excited to draw it. Plus, then the next one was draw a phallic-looking plant that everyone is licking. It's like, okay.
God.
Wow. So, I mean, as an artist, the conversation I'm having with the person who's art directing me is very, we are having fun here. Let's push it to the point where it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But he also wants the art to look really, really good.
Right, right.
So I know it's not for everyone, and that's totally okay. I mean, I too, the first thing that drew me to Lamentations was the art. And I was like, holy shit, you are showing women getting like skewered. What the hell? And then I looked more and I was like, oh, look, they're the main characters.
Right. Yeah.
So it is a little bit like, let's push it as far as we can. Like the module that just came out, Two Towers. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see any of that.
I have not. No.
So that's the module that was written by the GWAR frontman, the late GWAR frontman, Brocky. It has this psychedelic, crazy acid-colored art inside that is incredibly foul. But there's no way you can look at it and take it too seriously,
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a baby's head on a pike. Like,
Yeah.
Look, I take GWAR very seriously.
I actually was lucky enough to go and see GWAR before he passed, and we actually got to go backstage and talk about gaming with him. It was amazing.
That's cool.
Oh, wow, nice.
That's cool.
So this is written by the recently deceased frontman of GWAR, not the newer replacement.
Right.
Is that right?
Was that Odorous Arungus?
Yeah.
The past, I can't. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Unfortunately.
One of the things that I was contemplating making my Giving Me Life a few weeks back was the Onion AV Club's series called Uncovered or something along those lines. But they would get touring bands that come to Chicago to come into their little studio and do a cover song. Pick a song off of a list that they have every year. And one of my favorite videos from this was Iron and Wine. If you're not familiar with Iron and Wine, listeners, real mellow, real super soulful and then thoughtful and very mellow, covering, of course, a GWAR song. And just doing it as it's just him on a stool with a guitar and being as, quiet and thoughtful.
Like deadpan.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Deadpan about
And then, the best part, of course, is as he reaches the song's end, the camera pans over and GWAR is just standing there watching him perform. And then they have some critiques. They have some notes.
That's like the best thing ever. I'm going to have to look that up so I can watch that.
Yeah, it's good.
To bring it back to Lamentations.
All right.
Is there anything else about the game that I've missed or something you'd like to mention?
I guess it comes down again to it's not for everyone, but for someone like me who really likes horror mixed in with, my elves and my dungeon crawling and stuff, it can be a lot of fun.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Sarah Doombringer Richard. We will let you off the hot seat now.
While we have you, Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about Bluebeard's Bride?
Yeah.
I think our listeners would be really interested in that.
Well, Bluebeard's Bride is a game that I am co-designing with Marissa Kelly and Whitney Beltran. It is a game based on the fairy tale of Bluebeard, which is not the same as Blackbeard. He was a pirate. We're talking the serial killer in the fairy tale Bluebeard. So in the game, you play the bride of Bluebeard, and it's an investigative game where you go through room to room trying to uncover what secrets your new husband is hiding from you.
Oh,
so
cool.
whenever you play it, everybody at the table are aspects of the bride. So you play one person and we have a mechanic to help that along.
Awesome. Cool.
But it's definitely a horror game, especially whenever I run it.
I can't imagine.
I'm detecting a theme.
Yes.
And we're planning on having it come out this year. I have been running it at conventions and will continue to do so this year. So there'll be chances to play it. It actually came out of an event at Gen Con called Women Hack Night.
Okay, cool.
So that is where I met Whitney Strix. We did not know each other before, and neither of us had done any real game design. And we got paired up with Marissa. She was our mentor. And we just kind of had this idea like, hey, we like fairy tales and we'd like to make a game where it's kind of the like essential way fairy tales used to be when they were warnings. They were more about educating people on what not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how all this started. And now it's going to be a real game and get published.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks
Yeah,
for sharing
very
that. I
neat.
just wanted to ask a bit about that.
No, of course.
Is there anything else before we sign off here? Is there anything you have coming up that you wanted to plug or anything we should know about?
Also, hopefully this year you might see a game from me tentatively called Velvet Glove, where you play a teenage girl gang
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
So everyone is their own teenage girl gang, and you rumble and you talk about boys and do drugs and whatever else violence you feel like engaging in, while also dealing with being a teenage girl.
All right. Cool.
But yeah, you can find more stuff about me and what's coming up at Magpie Games. So
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we'll put some links up.
What was that one called again?
Velvet Glove.
Okay. I have to ask, how warriors are you going? Do we need themes for our gangs? Do we have to be on roller skates?
Are they a gang of like baseball player, girls? Or
Now I have to warn you if you guys get me started. So there are individual gangs that you pick from, and so there's one that's like retro bombshell girls, and then there is the Latina gang who are all painted up with like Day of the Dead. There is the African American gang. There's a wide spectrum. There's a Vietnamese gang. And you play these girls, and part of why that's important is that their different cultural backgrounds actually works with how they interact with like the police and their parents and the school. Not to be a downer, because you still get to go pretty warriors on it. But I mean, that's part of Warriors. So there's a little bit of that. This is our identity, and everyone else is outside of that.
Cool.
How are the grappling rules?
Oh, that's too funny. It's still pretty early in development, but it is an Apocalypse World hack.
Okay.
I can tell you that one of your stats at the moment is pussy. So you can interact with a cop using your pussy.
Sarah Doombringer Richardson laying it all out for us. All right. It's good. Awesome. Okay. Well, guys, I think we're done here. I feel like we're done here.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show. This was fun.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Hey, listeners, that's our show. If you want to get in touch with us, as always, go to Google Plus and go search in the community section of Google Plus for the Gauntlet. You will find us there. We also have a meetup where we run tons and tons of online games every month. It's called Gauntlet Hangouts. Where our Twitter is at Gauntlet RPG. I tweet precisely once a week, so sign up for the tweet. And I'm just like, I suck at it. I'm really bad at it. And sometimes I log on to it, and there's like 18 notifications, and I'm not engaging with it at all. I'm like, oh shit, all these people are engaging, and I don't know, I missed it. Yeah, I'm bad. I keep saying I need a Twitter czar. That's what we need. But that's it. Lots of fun. Thanks again, Sarah. Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
And thank you, Rich. Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Did we hit everything? Was there anything that we missed as far as like stuff we wanted to talk about with Sarah? Like, I didn't miss anything, did I?
I didn't get an answer on the fucking grapple rules.
That's fair. Yeah, you did not. Yeah.
She just like redirected to pussy thinking I was going to forget.